Okay, so I am here with Adam Lee from ThirdWeb. Uh, this is a. I have two of your NFTs. I don't think I got the first one, the original drop where you like put your email in, you get
Yep.
an NFT to get access to the system. But I got like the second and third. So I've been playing around with the system for a while. Give me a overview of what the idea of ThirdWeb is. What's the vision or goal? Because this is not an NFT project. I mean, you do NFTs, but it is not a NFT itself.
Yep.
Really, it is more foundational in infrastructure for kind of the NFT ecosystem. So, what is it all about?
So ThirdWeb is a developer platform to help reduce a lot of the complexity around building these Web3 applications. We provide developers a bunch of tools like software development kits or SDKs in their familiar Web2 coding languages like JavaScript or TypeScript or Golang or
This is where
Unity.
I've gotten confused.
These are, what people in Web 2 have been using to build their applications. In Web 3, you have to learn these new coding languages, there's new technologies, there's complexity, there's not a lot of tools to manage these different things.
Yeah, a lot of the projects are building stuff from scratch, right?
Exactly. So they're writing like their own smart contracts, which is kind of like the algorithmic, rule-based solution of like how your project speaks with the blockchain. So ThirdWeb removes all this complexity. You don't need to go and learn all these new languages. You don't need to learn Solidity. You don't have to write your own
Yep.
smart contracts. And we connect your application, your front end application to the blockchain, and we fill in all the things in between. So we give you a bunch of tools, almost like Lego blocks. We're the picks and
Yep.
shovels. You can go and stitch these together how you want to build what you want, and then we give you UI components that you can go and customize how it looks so it can fit within your own website's aesthetic. Now we do have some like no code features where people without any coding experience, they don't have any Web 2 program experience, they can come in and build very basic things like a DAO or a play to earn game or a token NFT collection or a marketplace, for example. And it's similar to like a Webflow or a Shopify or a Squarespace where you come in the platform, you kind of select what you want, you configure the different fields based on
Upload some images.
upload some images, and then at the end of it, we give you some embeddable code that you can go and put into your existing website, and that gives you like very basic features like a connect wallet button or a mint button or a purchase button. But for the more complicated developers, these SDKs kind of let you do a bunch of other things. And then we also allow people to import their own custom contracts and build their own custom contracts with ThirdWeb, so that you may be very advanced Web3 developer, but there's still not a lot of tools from like a team management perspective or wallet
You
security
got stuff you want to
perspective.
pull off the shelf,
Exactly, yes.
which seems like that's the direction that a lot of these things are headed, right? Like you're going to go in, start a project. Okay, maybe I have a developer, but I don't want to create 20 things.
No.
I just want to do two, and I want to pull the other 18 off the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're going to build Uber, you would use AWS, right? You're not going to go
Right.
rebuild AWS and go and buy the data center. So in a way, like ThirdWeb is kind of like an AWS. We don't have any infrastructure or servers that we own, and we don't host data, but we give you a bunch of different applications with an interface that you can go and build whatever application you want in the same way that you would do with different AWS features.
So it's a little like in the 90s or early 2000s, you had to know HTML to make a website.
Yep.
I remember doing my fantasy football site. I knew enough code to like put up the scores every week in a table format, and that was about it. And then in maybe the 2005 to 2010 range, you started getting tools that were you could build a blog or a rudimentary website that required a little bit of knowledge, but maybe not. You didn't have to know specifically HTML, but you had to kind of know how the back end worked a little bit.
Yep.
It seems like that's where we are today with ThirdWeb. Am I kind of understanding that? We're not at, hey, like I want to do an NFT project. Here is everything you need, like a Squarespace or a Weebly is today, where like, you know, grandma can make her own website.
Yep.
We're not quite there yet, I'm saying that because like I've struggled with, I don't know, I don't know the code behind Web 2 today, so that's where I kind of hit a roadblock with ThirdWeb. But it seems like that's where we are. Are we headed towards the even simpler? Or
Yeah, I think, our core focus is on developers. We feel like that's where we'll onboard more people and kind of accelerate these new use cases. If you don't have any coding experience today, you can still go use ThirdWeb. Some of the terminology in there may not be familiar, but there's a lot of materials that you can quickly get up to speed.
Yeah, there's a ton of YouTube videos.
So you should be able to go and build like a basic Web3 app, a marketplace collection, NFT, drop, etc., using ThirdWeb's current functionality.
Yep.
And the real only kind of coding component for like the base features is copying that embed at the end and putting it in your existing site. Now,
right.
if
you know where to put it, great.
If you know where to put it, yeah.
Yep.
And if you want to do a lot more complicated things, that's where like these SDKs come into play.
So you're basically building the tools for other people to launch their projects. Is that kind of the way to think about it?
Exactly. So, don't hold me to the number. It's probably changed recently, but we've had something like 50,000 projects created on ThirdWeb
50,000
since we launched in December.
Wow.
Like something like around 125,000 smart contracts created with us, and we're seeing everything from these kind of traditional NFT collections to people building some way to tokenize a ticket to attend a movie and fund the production of a movie. We're seeing traditional like Web 2 companies transformed into like a Web 3 company. An example is a company called Superlocal. They've essentially built like the Foursquare of Web 3 using ThirdWeb for a lot of their features, where instead of checking in now and getting just like a post that you can share with friends, you earn a token.
Nice.
So we've seen all these different use cases. We're working with everyone from like Web3 native founders trying to introduce these new models, all the way up to big Fortune 100 brands, NBA teams, celebrities, athletes. We're seeing people create new music products with us. So it's a wide spectrum. So we're giving you the tools to help you build what your vision is. We accelerate the timelines, we reduce the learning curve, and hopefully you're also saving you money while kind of increasing that end user experience.
So would it be fair to say that ThirdWeb is allowing creators, whether that creator has a development background or whether they're just interested in, I think one of the ones I saw was like a dad group, kind of a thing, but they're allowing people to innovate, really, like lowering the barrier of entry to innovate. You talked about AWS early on, and I don't know if everybody's aware of how influential they were in Web 2 in allowing the Snapchats and the Netflixes to build without having to spend $1 billion on server farms.
Yep.
So is that kind of the idea right now, that you're allowing a bunch of people to throw spaghetti at the wall, and for ThirdWeb it doesn't matter if everything sticks, but if a handful of things stick, that could be a amazing position to be in.
Yeah, I mean, we hope everyone sticks, but we know that's not realistic. Yeah, we are...
Well, and the goals of every project aren't going to be the same either.
Yeah,
if I'm just doing a dad group and I want to do a funky NFT, like, cool.
Exactly.
I'm not necessarily looking to make that my business, but it seems like there are, business and experimentation takes risks, so not everything's going to work. but the ones that do could be big.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we're enabling people who couldn't previously build these things to build them. We're giving them the tools to do so. Uh, we're giving them, there's new customer experiences, new business models that blockchain Web3 is enabling. We're accelerating those. We're making them realistic for a lot of people where they previously were not. And yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of see this direction. What's also interesting about ThirdWeb and Web3 as a whole is like the ownership. So if you go onto ThirdWeb and build a project, you own that. You own that smart contract, so that if you want to take it elsewhere, you can. If ThirdWeb's not around in 10 to 20 years, well, that contract
doesn't just
still
go away.
exists. And we're seeing people in the music industry who've previously not been able to make a lot of money as like a emerging artist, but they do have a community. They've usually been dependent on the Spotifys of the world, are now able to create their own music experience for their community, and they can kind of cut out all those middle pieces to kind of get their music published and promoted. And they can choose the royalty splits, and they can choose these things, and these things are for perpetuity. They don't have to worry about them going away. So we're seeing like a ton of these kind of niche artists, emerging creators kind of leverage this technology, build these new experiences, and make more money for themselves while doing so.
Speaking of making money, one of the things that's I really want to dive into in the Web3 space is how money is made and how we build a real economy and ecosystem, right? Like Google Alphabet now is doing amazing things, but it's in part because they make money. You could say that about Apple and Facebook. There aren't a lot of nonprofits that have driven innovation in the way that some of these companies are. So how does ThirdWeb make money, and what is the vision for that long term?
Yeah, so right now we're 100% free. Anyone that uses ThirdWeb this year will never have fees associated with any of the projects.
This is why I asked this question.
Yeah, and when we first launched, December, January, we played around with a couple of different models where we were taking a percentage of either mints or secondary, just to kind of understand like what users were comfortable with. I think,
which, by the way, would be the way that a launch pad works,
Yep.
or if you're a consultant, helping kind of build this stuff, that is the way that they typically work.
Yeah, exactly. So after learning that, we kind of decided that, fortunately we're well capitalized. We can kind of use this year as our growth year and onboard devs. But I think next year when we turn on our paid features, there'll always be like a baseline set that are free. And then you can kind of think of this as like potentially like a SaaS model, where there would be some tiers and there would be like a transaction fee for purposes of this conversation. Let's say it's 0.2% transaction fee. And then once you hit like a certain threshold, maybe that fee gets reduced, and there will be some like enterprise support features where people would maybe pay us a flat monthly rate for a set of services and usage up to a specific amount. So we'll definitely move to like more of like a SaaS model.
So you are very much you have the product. I think that it would be safe to say that you have product market fit.
Yep.
You're in kind of the phase of now we need to figure out the business model part of it. Is that fair to say?
I think like we have some gut feelings and know the direction of what that model will look like. It's just about like what are those numbers inside that model.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't help that the crypto market is kind of...
No, it doesn't help, from that perspective. But honestly, if you kind of look at the Bitcoin chart going down, the ThirdWeb contract chart keeps going up and to the right.
That's what I find so interesting in this space right now is the people who are building stuff, the price of the underlying cryptocurrency is not driving them out of the market.
No, it doesn't really affect us at all. And the people that were building stuff 3 months ago, 4 months ago, are still building stuff.
Yeah.
I think, the speculative nature of it, unfortunately, has created this like expectation that it's all about money. But I think what's happened is people that came in to try and win some, I'll say win some money, like a casino, like win some money, maybe they faded for a little. But I think like the hardcore builders are still here. I think like it's up to the people that are building today to like figure out, what are those like mainstream use cases? How do you like build those sticky customer experiences that onboard the next people? So we're not seeing anything slow down. We may see some people like delay releases,
Yeah.
as they kind of get a sense for like, do they need to reconsider their pricing? But no, if anything, it's kind of picked up for us. Yeah.
It's interesting because if we look back in specifically tech cycles, Google was started in, I think it was 1998, but they kind of grew up in the dot-com crash, 2008 to 2010, 11. You have the funding of the Ubers and the Lyfts and like just a ton of interesting SaaS models. Facebook was established at that point, but wasn't the behemoth that we know it is today.
Yep.
Know it as today. So this does seem to be a common theme that the builders who keep building in these down markets are the ones that are they're not just there for the cash grab, right? There's a longer term vision that is a much bigger pot potentially, which I think is interesting, is important to keep in mind. I did want to ask about, you started on Ethereum. Theoretically, your tools could be used on any blockchain.
So we started on like the EVM chains. So we're currently supporting Ethereum, Avalanche, Polygon, and Phantom. We are rolling out some of like these. I forget the word, but we're rolling out on Arbitrum and Optimism, these like roll-ups, and we will support Solana fairly soon. We really kind of are driven by where like the customer demand is. Solana is definitely where that demand is most right now, but ultimately the goal is to be blockchain agnostic. We've had a lot of big brands ask us about Tezos, so we have to think about supporting that. Cosmos comes up a lot. Then a lot of these like
What's
other.
the reason behind some of those? Because I know I look at the user numbers on some of these. I think Solana and Ethereum are probably pretty neck and neck at this point. Maybe the Solana numbers from a user number, anyways, not dollar transactions, but user number might even be higher. So those seem to be the clear leaders, and some of the other ones you're talking about, Tezos. I've seen the numbers on like Avalanche, and they're much smaller. So that's got to be a interesting dynamic to say like, hey, do we want to invest in this, even though there's going to be a 1/100th of the users?
Exactly, and that's kind of why we are very like customer driven. Solana makes a lot of sense. Based on where the users are, we may focus developing features based on what they tell us versus making assumptions. But a lot of the things we hear based for blockchain selection is like eco-friendly. We hear a lot of brands want to use Avalanche because of this.
Is that just a branding thing for the blockchains? Because I think the number is like Solana transaction is like this roughly the same as doing a Google search.
Yeah,
So
and I think like Polygon, they say it's like the equivalent of sending like 1.5 emails or something like that. So I think it is like a lot of talking points.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these brands are being driven by like sponsorship. Like maybe Near Protocol has sponsored someone, and now they want to use ThirdWeb on Near. I think like there will end up being like lots of them. Maybe hundreds. I don't know. I think that's just going to naturally happen. I think like for like this to get really like mainstream, the users are ultimately like not necessarily going to like care too much about the blockchain, and a lot of the new builders.
As long as the wallet supports it.
As long as the
wallet
wallet supports it and the user experience, and they get to go to the app and it does what they expected, like it's not really going to like impact them that much.
It's going to be kind of background noise.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about, because I think Coinbase is one that has talked about making their wallet multi-chain. Some of the other popular ones I haven't heard as much about, but
And we're seeing people try to build multi-chain wallets. I've seen a couple try to build them with ThirdWeb. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the big barrier here. Like, how do you make these technologies and these terminologies like not the things we speak about, but it's more about like, oh, did you see what this new startup's doing? Not that why did you choose Avalanche?
Yeah, it's very, the analogy is always it's the internet in 1995, and it's like it's restarting the modem.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the silly things that we used to do just to get the internet to work at all, and we're at that phase in the blockchain.
Absolutely.
And it seems like so many of these projects, ThirdWeb is one of them, are attempting to push that difficulty to the background.
Exactly.
So, I don't know. Hopefully we
like you can imagine it will get to a point where we're no longer saying NFT, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I earned this cool sword in my game because I accomplished X, Y, and Z. Not I got this NFT and it's a sword. I feel like once these terms start to kind of fade in the back of minds and people are really thinking about like the actual thing they're doing or the app they're using, that's kind of when we'll like have checked like, okay, we're now mainstream box. But now it's always, NFT. We're seeing people try to like get away from that, especially in like gaming and esports where there's like some negative sentiment towards NFTs and crypto.
Well, and there's so many use cases that seem to make logical sense that there's just an aversion for one reason or another. I mean, we're sitting in the lobby of a hotel in New York. Why isn't this an NFT that is just sitting in my wallet and I can come up and scan a QR code that's in the NFT or just scan that NFT somehow, scan my wallet, as opposed to like finding my confirmation number in my email and, oh, by the way, I've gotten 8 other spam emails from you in the meantime. And it's just this is what I think is interesting with the blockchain is if when done correctly, it does make things simpler.
Yep.
And like you don't have to have your email with you all the time. You don't have to have a piece of paper. You don't have to. Concert tickets is always the example, right?
Yep.
If I print off 10 concert tickets, which one's the real ticket? Well, it's just the first one that's used. But on the blockchain, that wouldn't be the case. But we're so early that, I mean, if this hotel tried to sell NFTs as hotel rooms, people would be like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah, it's a good example. Like I'm at a Marriott. I know I have a Marriott Bonvoy account. I couldn't find it. I was logged out of the app, so I'm trying to find it. Like, which email is it on? Let me reset 4 of my email addresses to see.
Send you a confirmation code.
Gets me a confirmation. Then I thought I entered in the password, but maybe I typed in the wrong number, so now I had to reset it again. But it'd be cool, like you said, you come in here, you've got like your NFT. Hopefully one day they're all in like one wallet, like an Apple wallet or something like that. And you come in and you can see, oh, look at this Bonvoy NFT. I can see how many nights I've stayed. I can see what my status is. I can see what my upgrades are.
And I saw Solana announce, or a project on Solana announced, I think it was yesterday, executable NFTs. So you can actually just click on, my understanding at least on a cursory level, is you could just click on the NFT and then it can execute something.
Oh, that's very cool.
So, I mean, it could even be it goes to your wallet. Apple's talked about doing this with wallets, right? Like, I just walk in, click my NFT, and it opens my room.
Yep.
I mean, maybe that tech should exist in a Web 2 world, but it just doesn't at this point.
Not easily, right? You probably still have a bunch of steps to go through. But yeah, that makes sense. Like, I think we've like only like touched a small kind of scope of where this will eventually get to. I don't even think we like really know, what these use cases will evolve into over time.
So speaking of that, what are the next steps for ThirdWeb? Because I mean, we could talk about what the ideas are for 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And the vision, but that's going to change as you build things today. What are kind of the next things that are coming down the pipeline that are going to make this easier for developers, or maybe easier for me as somebody who's not as tech savvy
Yep.
person, but interested in, hey, how does this stuff work? Where are we headed in the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so I think like part of the problem in Web3 today is that things are like being built for like individuals.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of thinking about teams. So like if you think about using like Stripe at a big organization, there's
Yep.
probably like 20 people that have different admin rights, and some can do other certain things, and others can only view or download reports. So we're building like a very like uh, you know a wide scope of like team management products.
So as you move into the corporate environment specifically, that seems like that would be a requirement.
Exactly. So only certain people can have access to turn on the smart contract or edit it. Certain people can view the dashboard that's associated with it. Maybe finance needs different controls to security or different access. So like, what is like the team management, analytics, reporting stack for this? And how do we make that like very easy to use, just like you would do in like a Web 2 product? So like that's definitely a big focus for us. Right now, it's really hard to do that with like private keys or setting up like multi-sig wallets and things like that. So we're definitely focused on like that team experience. A lot more kind of features for the experienced Web3 devs that have already built smart contracts or are really kind of versed, like better tools to help them manage those existing
So
contracts.
more on the advanced side.
Yeah, definitely more on the advanced side, while also making UI improvements and feature improvements for the no-code
For the dummies
group.
like me.
Yeah, so we're not going to abandon no-code. We're definitely going to still be there. We still envision that this is a big use case, but definitely think that the way to kind of onboard more people is through like these Web3 native products where there's a lot of experience. We kind of gone through a lot of iterations of what works and what doesn't work.
Well, and maybe we're at an adoption curve where that's going to be the next phase of growth, because people who are not versed are not clamoring to get into NFTs yet. That's maybe that 5 years down the road
Yeah,
kind of thing.
but to my point earlier on is that if you're a Web 2 developer and you can do JavaScript or TypeScript, etc., when you come into ThirdWeb and you've done nothing Web 3 related before other than maybe read some things and see some terminology, a lot of things start to connect. You're like, oh, I now understand what this means and how it fits into the application stack. Oh, this smart contract is almost like an API, or I now understand what an RPC is. So like ThirdWeb is also like a great learning tool. We do have a big focus on Web 2 brands and gaming studios.
Okay.
So we are developing a lot of like training and educational material for them. We do want to do workshops to onboard them. So we don't want to, they're definitely just as important as the Web3 natives. So when I talk about like team management tools and things like that, it's even maybe more so important for the Web2 world, who need you to go through some sort of security review and go through their procurement process and sign their enterprise agreement, and what do these things mean? So it's also to kind of give them confidence that this is not just something out there in the ether. This is a real software development tool, and we are thinking about it, from an enterprise team perspective.
It's interesting because I think of ThirdWeb as a Web3 first company, but I think what you're describing is that and I've heard some really good arguments for this, you're making Web3 accessible to Web2 companies or maybe established companies, because I think even at its best, Web3 and the blockchain and NFTs and all of these things are not the thing for everything, right? They're a piece of the puzzle. Maybe they're an important piece of the puzzle, but they need to interact with Target and Best Buy and Marriott and these bigger infrastructures. They're not a completely standalone thing. We can't rebuild everything, is maybe the way to say it. So that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and the saying, we're still early. I think you just mentioned that there's now this executable NFT that you can touch and it does an action. I think like there'll continually be new things that come out. I think there's kind of two tracks. There's what's the business model? What are
Yeah.
you trying to do? What's the experience? How are you trying to make money? What's important to you from a ethics perspective? And does Web3 fit in? I think more times than not, you can find that use case. There are a lot of things that you don't need to build a DAO for example, right?
So many things that are DAOs don't need to be DAOs.
So like, is today's DAO structure and what the use cases are going to be the same in a few years? Probably not. ThirdWeb, from a Web3 philosophical perspective, we are decentralized maxis, I guess. We are 100% on chain. All of our smart contracts that anyone uses, they own them 100%. We don't host any data. We don't have any servers. We don't build our own APIs. We are essentially like a protocol layer, but we understand that most of the world is that doesn't actually, they don't care about it in the sense that it's not the most important thing for them when building their business. Now, there are a lot of benefits from like security, data privacy, data portability, things like that, where these big brands are actually interested. But they still have regulatory things they need to be concerned about. Like if you're an alcohol beverage company, you still need people to check that they're 21 when they come to your site.
Yeah.
Well, if you wanted to do an NFT, how do you do that? How do you ensure that? So we're thinking through those use cases. So there's always like these new challenges. So we just had a big beverage brand tell us that, we need to make sure that certain countries, for example, North Korea, do not purchase this NFT. How do we make sure that that happens, but then also ensure that doesn't happen on secondary marketplaces? That's like a whole new challenge and like a whole new way you have to think about
The
what do you
soul-bound
program,
NFT
like soul
becomes-
bounds, exactly. So there's still these corporate use cases that you're going to have to fix in real time as they come up.
Well, I will have to plan to talk to you in like 6 months about the business model then.
Yeah,
I would love to dig into
we can
that,
talk.
but we don't. But since you don't know exactly what that is yet, I won't. I did want to ask you about. So we're at NFT NYC. The market is crazy right now, not really in a good way, but it does seem like there's a lot of fleshing out of projects that are serious and ones that aren't. As people are onboarded into this space and are interested in getting into NFTs, what would you tell them to look at or look for when doing research on projects or blockchains, or what's sort of the, if somebody's brand new and is like, hey, I'm intrigued, where would you point them, or what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think like what's their motivation? I think if your motivation is to make money, it's probably not going to end too well for you. I don't think most people are traders. It seems pretty easy to like buy something and flip
Especially
something.
when royalties are 10%.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it was like, I think Naval, a lot of people have probably said it, but, if get rich quick schemes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
I think like that's like a lot of this. My vibe on NFT NYC is it's definitely as chaotic as I thought it would be, but it's not as in your face from like here's 10 million QR codes plastered all around with different JPEGs and like scan it, and people dressed up in like coordinated swag for their like crypto ape killer
if
club.
Was still 4,000, maybe it would be.
Maybe
like
it would have been. So like back to your question, I think if you want to get engaged, like what do you enjoy? If you are someone who enjoys Marvel, like go find the community that's into comics and superheroes, and go and participate and learn and participate in ways that maybe don't require you to spend money. Like go find where you like hanging out, and I think that will lead to like opportunities. So I think it's very much community driven. A lot of like the recent onboarding was probably like, wow, this is a good opportunity for me to make some money. Hopefully that kind of dies out. I've got a lot of NFTs I bought that I thought I'd make money on, and now I'm like, I'm just going to, I don't want anyone to see this wallet. I'm going to create a new wallet quickly. So I think you just have to be like cautious, patient. This isn't going anywhere. You don't need to feel like you're missing out on something. learn, be curious, find the people you like hanging out with, and yeah, that would be my advice.
It seems like even if you're getting into a free NFT or a very, very inexpensive NFT, just understanding the technology too.
Yeah, and go hang
there's
out in the
something there.
go hang out in the Discord. Don't buy things that you don't understand. I
Yeah.
think we've all done it. I've bought things. I bought Luna. You know, I, you know, so don't take my advice. What do I know? But
You admitted you bought Luna.
yeah,
That's a first step.
yeah, maybe one day I'll get a Luna NFT that shows that I believed in something that I shouldn't have believed in.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time. I'm excited to see where ThirdWeb goes because this is one of the first tools that I saw that I was like, oh, I can see how this makes all of this complex stuff behind the scenes easier. So I'm excited to see development of the tools, and then also I'm interested in the business model, right? Because I want
Yeah.
projects like this to survive, and you can't do that uh, if you're not generating revenue yet. So we'll talk again in a while about that. But
Sounds good. And in between, we can work on a little project for you.
I have some stuff on the test net,
Okay.
but nothing out on the main net yet. So
Excellent.
appreciate the time.
Yeah,
Adam.
thanks for
so
having
much.
me.